So what you're looking at is a set of fender flares off the F350. They could be Bushwhacker, I don't know. They could be whatever they are. There's stainless hardware that goes in here. Nuts on the back, just looks cool. Doesn't do anything otherwise. I say buy them without those because guys like me hate having to sand around all them little holes and painting it. But that don't matter. We modified the fender on this truck, which I think I showed in another video because we're modifying the front fender flares. So what was happening is if you turn the wheel too sharp, the back of the tire would come up and just barely rub this. And of course it actually tweaked one fender out of whack and I had to pull it back, and it's decent but not perfect. But I mean, it could have been hit a couple of times. And the bottom of the fender down here, the metal part was all cracked and busted, and the metal was pushed up underneath. So what we did, I wonder if I can get a better view of that. There's a body line here that comes, the same. So I split this here, shoved it back in, epoxied it, riveted it. So basically it's just going to come down straight, and this shape here will taper to nothing. And that fits right on top of the fender the way we modified the fenders. So that'll work really well. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take some 80 grit, clean up some of this this stuff here. So this is what I wanted to actually talk about. Mud flaps go in here, which is good because there's some holes. I fixed some, but not all of them. You can see down here. So I made this super rough. And people wonder what to use. A lot of guys will use that 5-minute plastic epoxy. What I did, when I relieved this, I left the extra material. I didn't chomp it out. And I pulled this in and riveted it tight together between the 2 layers of plastic. Here, let me grab the other one. Let's see, I'm just moving this around here. There you go. So you can see this is all the extra plastic. Out here there's plastic that still goes out. So all underneath this is a 5-minute epoxy. I roughed it all up with I think 36 or 40 grit, whatever was on the roll lock, mini grinder. You can see here, this big chunk here is epoxied. And I got the long rivets. Now this is important, especially with plastic. You'll see they look really fat. You can buy washers that fit perfectly over the rivets. So I used long rivets, put the washers in. That'll never move. The epoxy won't let it move. The rivets will hold. And then you see all this extra glue. That's not epoxy. That is this. It's a panel bond adhesive. It does metal and SMC. Don't know what SMC stands for, to be honest. I'm sure other people do. Leave a comment if you do. But I mean, you pull the paper. There's a paper that comes all rolled up in the package, and when you read it, the plastics and trims and blah blah blah, and basically any of this stuff. These are aftermarket, so I don't know if it's the same. But you put a little bit on, see what it does. There's 2 different liquids in that tube. Yeah, see, some guys might want to see that. You look in there, and hold it up into the light. It's like a whole bunch of little squares in there, but what happens when the stuff goes through here, there, now you can see the pattern. It goes back and forth, and by the time it comes out the tip, it's mixed. So it is a 2-part epoxy. It's not just some kind of glue, right? So this stuff, when you bond metal together and basically make it super rough, like 36-40 grit, stick them together, and then go to pull them apart, the amount of power it takes to pull it apart, you'd be ripping steel and wrecking stuff. So it's good. So what I did after this was initially epoxied, riveted, I used the panel bond adhesive as a filler. I put a lot of it on, and anywhere where there was a gap, I grabbed a Bondo spreader, which I cut down to about 1 inch, just so that you could shove it in real well. I mean, this stuff really holds. Like, this will never let go. So what I'm going to do now, Like here, obviously, because I pulled the plastic under, it left a big lip the thickness of the plastic. So I filled all this with the filler. Now you can bodywork and paint right over this glue stuff, as far as I know. At least I hope so, because that's what we're doing. What I'm going to do now is sand this off with 80. I might lose some of the rivet heads. Some of them are sunk a little bit, but it's so glued that shouldn't affect anything. Most of them will still be there. It might be just like this one's high and this one. These ones will be buried. But once we get this all rough, and we're going to make it super rough with the 80, I might grab the roll-lock and give it a quick buzz to make it really, really rough. And if we take a little bit of fiberglass Bondo or filler, and we're going to pour a little bit of resin in just so that it's stickier, we're going to go over top because that stuff will stick to this. This will glue fiberglass and filler. So when we put the filler on, they should be super duper compatible. And we'll flood this out and we'll kind of resand our shape in here. Same with the bottom. And that's what we're going to do. And I think these will turn out really well. We'll paint them, put them on the truck. All going to be color matched to the truck, which is what they were before. This was the original color. I can't remember the name, something stone metallic. Camera's picking it up because it's so wore that it's hard to make it look shiny. But that's the color of the truck, and everything's going to match. I think he's got a chrome bumper on the truck now, so we're going to scuff that super duper rough with a roll lock, put 3 layers of epoxy primer on the bumper, and this way we can paint over it and it'll stay. I know a lot of guys at home, if you're going to do the spray bomb on the, and they make paints that they claim, I think, what is that, VHF or VTH or whatever that good stuff is anyway, for doing rims and stuff. Not on chrome. Look, chrome is tough, and it's the front bumper. The car ahead of you throws stones, they get chipped. But if you make it rough enough, and I mean pretty rough, wear a mask because chrome stuff coming off is really nasty. You don't have to get all the chrome off, but you got to make it super duper rough and use the epoxy primer, put a couple coats on, sand it, then you can actually paint it, and it should stay. I mean, it's going to chip just like a new car would chip. Eventually you'll get chips and stone chips, but it should hold. So that's what we're doing with these. We finished our tailgate over. It's already sitting in the booth. So I'm going to go ahead and do the body work on these this afternoon. And then we've got that grill, which I believe we're going to epoxy prime because it's some kind of weird plastic. It's probably like your cheap fleet truck sort of thing, but he wants that the same color as the truck. So I'm still toying with that notion. I might go to my buddy's wrecking yard tomorrow morning. He's close by. And if he's got a painted version of one of these F350 or even a 250 grill, whatever fits in the hole, I might rob that, scuff it, and shoot it because it'll be easier. Because this is literally like that raw, bumpy kind of plastic. And I mean, I think the epoxy primer would hold, but I don't know. It just seems like the wrong thing to use, but maybe not. But either way, that's what we're doing. We'll prep these. These had some minor repairs down at the bottom, which I still got to fix up, just from stuff coming up off the back tires and hitting, I guess. People are hard on these monster trucks, I suppose. But yeah. So like I say, that panel bond adhesive, some of them say plastic on them in the instructions. If they do, that'll work. I mean, this is probably, if you tried to break this out, you're probably more likely to just bend the plastic here or down below. Like, I don't think this, I mean, I've glued some stuff together and brought it outside and beat it and smashed it with a hammer and a pipe, and it holds. That's not going nowhere. But anyway, so if you're trying to do those weird little things at home, like a lot of guys, ground effects on Honda Civics, all this sort of things, especially you young guys, I know there's a glue and some spray paint, and then later the paint doesn't adhere real well to this stuff, even if you use the spray bomb primer, because again, it's all lacquer-based stuff, and it's kind of hokey. Make sure you can buy that primer, and I think there's a clear coat like that as well. There's a little button on the bottom of the can that you snap, and it's a 2-part. And you shake it. That stuff is a 2K product. It will hold. A lot of the other stuff, not so much. So then what you'd have to do is make sure you put enough filler if you're using spray bomb stuff, that you don't see any of this, just the fiberglass filler, which the spray bomb stuff sort of holds onto, at least better than this. But that's what we're doing today. Thanks for watching.